I stopped getting compliments on my hair somewhere around 58, and I never told anyone that. Not my sister, not my stylist, nobody. I just quietly stopped asking for opinions because I already knew what I'd hear. That changes today because there are 7 specific haircuts doing the opposite of what mine was doing. Cuts that lift the face, soften the jaw, and read as rich and put together the second you walk into a room. I researched the worst style mistakes and the best fixes for women over 50 so you get real answers, not guesses. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. I cover this every single week. Part 1. The soft layered bob with face framing pieces. Here's something most women never hear at the salon. Length itself isn't what ages a face. Weight is. A bob that hangs flat and heavy at the jawline pulls everything downward, and gravity does the rest of the damage for free. You've probably felt this without knowing why. You look in the mirror after a fresh cut, and something feels off, even though the stylist did exactly what you asked for. That off feeling is weight sitting in the wrong place. The fix is a soft layered bob, cut just at or slightly below the chin, with face framing pieces that are shorter at the cheekbone and lengthen back toward the jaw. This isn't the same blunt bob you had in your 30s. The layering here is internal. The outer shape stays clean, but underneath, a stylist removes bulk so the ends move instead of sitting like a helmet. That movement is what tricks the eye into seeing lift. Here's why it actually works on a face that's changed shape over the decades. Skin loses some of its firmness along the jaw and neck, and a heavy, straight-edged bob traces that exact line, drawing attention right to it. Face framing layers do the opposite. They create a soft diagonal that pulls the eye up toward the cheekbones and eyes instead. You're not hiding anything. You're redirecting where people look first, and where they look first is what people remember. Ask for it exactly this way at your next appointment. Request a jaw-length bob with internal layering, face framing pieces cut on a diagonal starting at the cheekbone, and a razor or point cut finish on the ends rather than a blunt line. That last detail matters more than people realize. A blunt cut bob reads heavier no matter how short the layers underneath are, because the outer silhouette is still one solid edge. A razored or point cut edge breaks that line up just enough to soften it. Here's the moment this really lands. Picture the first time someone new meets you after this cut. They're not going to say, "Your hair looks younger," because nobody says that out loud. What actually happens is smaller and better. Their eyes go to your face first, they hold eye contact a beat longer, and the conversation feels easier because you're not unconsciously tucking hair behind your ear or second-guessing how the back looks. That's the real result. Not a compliment. A shift in how the whole interaction feels. The specific swap to bring to your stylist is this. Trade the flat, one-length bob that stops abruptly at the jaw for a face-framing bob with diagonal layers that start at the cheekbone and taper down. Same general length. Completely different effect. One sits on the face like a frame around a portrait that's slightly too small. The other opens the whole picture up. There's a reason I'm starting the list here, and not somewhere flashier. This is the cut most women already have some version of, which means it's also the easiest one to get almost right and still miss the actual lift. Once you understand what internal weight removal does, the next 2 cuts on this list are going to make a lot more sense, because they use the exact same principle in completely different shapes. Part 2. The long layered shag and the textured pixie. Most women assume a shag cut belongs to someone 25 and reckless with a flat iron. That assumption is costing you one of the most forgiving cuts that exists for a changing face. A long layered shag, done with curtain bangs that split and sweep off the forehead, does something almost no other cut does at once. It adds volume at the crown, where thinning shows first, and it softens the forehead and brow line without covering the eyes. You've likely noticed your part looking wider than it used to, or your crown sitting a little flatter, no matter how you blow it out. That's not something a trim fixes. It's a structural volume problem, and the shag solves it by building layers that start high, near the crown, so the hair has somewhere to lift from instead of just lying against the scalp. Ask for this precisely. Long layers starting at the crown rather than at the mid-length, with curtain bangs cut to split naturally at the center and graze just above the brow. Curtain bangs are the detail that makes this age-appropriate rather than costume-y. They're not a solid fringe, they're 2 soft pieces that sweep to the side, which means they grow out gracefully and never demand daily styling with a round brush. The crown layering does the heavy lifting for volume. And the bangs do the heavy lifting for softening the upper face. Here's what actually shifts once this grows in. People stop reading your forehead first. Curtain bangs break up that wide, flat expanse above the brow, and combined with crown volume, the whole silhouette reads fuller and more relaxed, almost like your hair has more of it than it did last year, even though the length is roughly the same. The second cut in this part solves a completely different problem, and it's one women avoid out of fear rather than logic. A textured pixie with a side-swept fringe gets dismissed because women worry it will look severe or masculine on a softened, mature face. The opposite is true when it's cut correctly. Severity in a pixie comes from choppy, uniform-length pieces sitting close to the head. Softness comes from varied lengths on top, longer near the front, and a fringe that sweeps rather than sits straight across. Request it this way. A textured pixie with the crown pieces left slightly longer than the sides, point cut for texture rather than blunt cut, and a side-swept fringe long enough to tuck behind one ear when you want a change of look. That tuck behind option matters. It means the cut has two on-chun different moods built into one style, which is exactly the kind of versatility a heavier cut can't offer. Here's the swap that matters for both of these. Trade a flat, all one-length cut for either the volume-built shag with curtain bangs or the texture-varied pixie with a side fringe. Both solve the same crown and forehead concern from opposite directions, one through added length and movement, the other through short, deliberate texture. Choose the shag if you want ease with a straightener. Choose the pixie if you're ready to let go of length completely and want something that photographs beautifully from every angle. Either way, what's coming in the next part builds directly on this volume principle, and it might be the most requested cut on this entire list. Part 3. The voluminous lob with soft waves. There's a length that stylists quietly call the in-between danger zone. Collarbone length, cut with no layering strategy at all. It's too long to lift on its own and too short to fall with any real movement, so it just sits there, adding visual weight exactly where you don't want it, right at the shoulders and collarbone. You know this length if you've ever grown your hair out, just a little more, after a shorter cut and stalled somewhere around your shoulders, unsure whether to keep going or cut it back. That stall point is usually where the lob problem lives. The fix is a voluminous lob. A long bob that hits right at or just below the collarbone, cut with rounded layers throughout and finished with a loose, soft wave rather than left pin straight. This is a completely different lob than the one you'd see on someone in their 20s. The layers here are rounder and less choppy, built to create body through the mid-length instead of sharp fragments at the ends. And the wave isn't optional styling, it's part of what makes the length work at all. Here's the mechanic behind it. Straight hair at collarbone length has nowhere to go but down. And down is exactly the direction that reads as tired on a mature face. A soft wave, even a loose one from a 1-inch curling iron held for just a few seconds per section, breaks that downward line into gentle movement. The eye follows movement, not straight edges, so the whole look feels lighter even though the length hasn't changed at all. Bring this exact request to your stylist. A lob cut at collarbone length with rounded layers built through the midshaft, not choppy ends, and ask them to show you how to set a loose wave pattern with either a 1-inch iron or foam rollers overnight if you want to skip heat altogether. Rollers are worth mentioning because they solve a real complaint. Women who love this cut but don't want to hold a hot iron near their face every morning can get the same soft wave overnight. No heat, no risk. Here's what changes once this is your actual, lived-in hairstyle rather than a one-time blowout. Your hair starts doing something it hasn't done in years. It moves when you turn your head. That single detail, motion instead of stillness, is one of the strongest visual cues of vitality that exists, and it has nothing to do with color or length at all. The name swap here is simple and specific. Trade flat, straight, collarbone length hair with no layer structure for a rounded layer lob finished in a loose, soft wave. Same approximate length, entirely different energy. I'm not going to tell you this is the easiest cut on the list, because it does require a little styling effort most mornings. What I will tell you is that the next cut solves the exact opposite problem. For the woman who wants all of this lift and softness with almost no daily effort at all. Part 4. The blunt bob with soft undercut layers and the feathered crop. Thick, straight hair actually causes its own aging problem, and almost nobody talks about it because the advice out there is aimed at thin hair. If your hair is dense and holds a triangle shape, narrow at the crown, wide at the jaw, A standard bob just makes that triangle more obvious. It's not a volume problem. It's a shape problem, and shape problems need weight removed from a very specific spot. The fix is a blunt bob with soft undercut layers hidden underneath, at the nape and lower back sections only. From the outside, the silhouette still looks clean and blunt, exactly how you like it. Underneath, a stylist thins out the bulk near the neckline, so the bob doesn't flare outward at the jaw the way dense hair naturally wants to. Ask for it this exact way: a blunt, one-length bob on the surface, with an undercut layer technique used only at the nape and lower interior, never visible from the front or sides. Say the word undercut layers specifically, because a general request for thinning often gets misread as thinning shears through the whole head, which weakens the very silhouette you're trying to keep clean and sharp. Here's the payoff. Thick hair that used to feel heavy by the middle of the day suddenly holds its shape for hours without that jaw-level flare creeping back in. And because the outside line stays completely intact, this cut still photographs as polished and structured, never soft or undone. It's the sharpest looking option on this entire list, which matters if your personal style leans more tailored than relaxed. The second cut in this part goes in almost the opposite direction, towards something with movement and ease. A feathered crop with a deep side part uses short, feathered layers throughout, longer near the front and shorter toward the back, finished with a side part deep enough to create real asymmetry rather than a straight middle line. Bring this request in specifically: a feathered crop with layers point cut for texture, longer pieces left at the front to sweep across the forehead, and a deep side part rather than a center part. The deep part is doing quiet work here. A center part on short hair can read as severe on a face where the features have softened, while a deep side part creates an angle that naturally draws the eye up and across. The same lifting effect the face framing bob used, just built into a much shorter shape. Here's the swap for this whole part, covering both cuts. If your hair is thick and holding a triangle shape at the jaw, trade the untouched bulky bob for a blunt bob with hidden undercut layers at the nape. If you're after something short with real ease, trade a flat center part crop for a feathered crop with a deep side part and forward swept front pieces. Two very different starting problems, two specific named fixes. What's coming next is the final cut on this list, and it's the one built specifically for women who want elegance without ever touching a hot tool. Part 5. The shoulder-length cut with money piece framing. Here's the one nobody expects to hear. The single most requested rich haircut in salons right now isn't short, and it isn't dramatic. It's a simple shoulder-length cut with almost no layering at all through the body, paired with just 2 or 3 face-framing highlighted pieces at the front. Stylists sometimes call this money piece framing, and it costs far less than people assume, because it's targeted color on a handful of strands, not a full head of foils. You've seen this on women who somehow look effortlessly put together without an elaborate style. Hair that just schemes the shoulders, healthy looking, with a little brightness right at the face. That's not luck. That's 2 specific technical choices working together. The first choice is length and finish. Cut straight across at the shoulder with the ends blunt but softly rounded, not razor sharp, so the hair reads healthy and thick rather than thin and wispy. The second choice is the money piece. 2 to 3 face framing strands lighten 2 to 3 shades brighter than your natural color, placed starting right at the part and running down past the cheekbone. That controlled brightness is what does the visual work an entire head of highlights would otherwise be needed for. Here's why the combination reads as elegant rather than plain. Solid, healthy-looking length signals ease and confidence on its own, but without any brightness near the face, it can read a little flat under certain lighting. The money piece solves that in the one spot that matters most, right where people's eyes naturally land first during a conversation, without the upkeep or the cost of full color. Ask for this exactly: a blunt shoulder-length cut with rounded, healthy ends, plus 2 to 3 money piece highlights starting at the part and finishing just past the cheekbone. 2 to 3 shades lighter than your base color. Tell your colorist you want it subtle and grown-out friendly, meaning placed close enough to the part that regrowth won't show a harsh line for several months. That detail is what keeps this low maintenance instead of turning into a 6-week salon commitment. Here's the real shift this creates. This is the cut that gets you asked where you get your hair done. Not because it's elaborate, but because it looks intentional and cared for without looking like it took effort. That's the exact quality people associate with elegance. And it's the quiet thread running through every cut on this entire list. Not more hair, not more color, not more styling time, just weight, movement, and brightness placed exactly where they do the most work. The swap here is straightforward and specific. Trade plain, all one color shoulder length hair for the same length with rounded healthy ends and 2 to 3 targeted money piece highlights at the face. It's the smallest change on this list, and for a lot of women, it ends up being the one they keep coming back to year after year, long after they've tried every other cut here. 7 cuts. And every single one comes down to the same 3 levers. Where the weight sits, where the movement happens, and where the brightness lands. That's not a secret stylists guard closely. It's just rarely explained out loud. And now you have the exact language to walk in and ask for it. Which one matched what you're dealing with right now? The flat crown, the jaw-level flare, or that stalled collarbone length? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. Next week I'm covering the color mistakes that fight against every one of these cuts, so you'll want to see that before your next appointment. Like this video, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom Path, and I'll see you in the next one.